Hi, I'm Sam Glosser, Content Director here at whirlidurb, and I want to welcome you to our Content Connection series. And in this Content Connection series, what I'm doing is I'm interviewing educators from zoos, museums, cultural institutions, and authors who deliver programs through video conferencing that you can bring into your classroom. And I'm asking them about how they're using technology to support educational initiatives and even to extend their outreach. And today, I am so excited. We have with us Janie Panagopolous, who lives in Midlothian, Virginia, which is near Richmond. So welcome, Janie. I'm so glad to have you today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun.
Well, this is, like I said, we've been doing this. I've talked to a lot of people from zoos and museums. You are the first author I've gotten to talk to, so I'm so excited. And I like to tell people one of my first memories of going to the library was with my grandmother. I love to read, and she instilled that passion with me. And I can remember coming out and I would carry this many books, like from here up to my chin. And so you can tell that was a long time ago, because now the kids will have their e-readers and have all the books loaded on it. But however we get to them, I think reading is so important. So thank you so much for joining us. So what I want to do is let's get started. Let's talk about you. I want to hear about kind of what your passion is, how you got started being a writer, what type of books you write. So tell us, what is it?
Well, I've been writing for 34 years, so I'm pretty old. Most kids, I'm the age of their grandmother. I used to say I was the age of their mothers, and then they're going, my mom's 30, and I'm going, wait a minute, okay, I got to adjust that. But I have been writing for a very long time, and I started out as a journalist, did some work in advertising, went into journalism, worked for newspapers and magazines, and in the last 20 years, I've been working with books. I did, however, start writing when I was in third grade. I had a third grade teacher, Miss Richardson, who was, I believe, about 107. She had a full mustache, half of a beard. My grandmother had had her as a teacher. My mother had had her as a teacher. And I was so privileged to have her as a teacher. And she decided I talked too much, so I spent most of my third grade at Janie's talking table in the back of the classroom. And that was a little bit disastrous, because she told me, if you don't learn to button up your lip, you're going to spend a year with me again. And it was just like, I'm going to get held back because I talk too much. Now, everyone knew I talked too much. My family talks too much. But that was not appropriate for my household. They wouldn't be happy about that. And she put down a piece of paper and a pencil, and she said, start writing. Put your ideas on paper. Stop disrupting my class. And I did, and I never have stopped since. And I've loved it. And my writing, I do historical fiction. Actually, it's called documentary historical fiction. I spend any place from 3 to 8 years doing research on each subject that I write about, because I figure if I'm going to be writing about history, I need to know something about history. So I do the physical connection with history. I go to where history is taking place at. I do the academic readings. I've got about 8,000 books in my home, and they're all reference books. I don't read novels because I just don't have time to do that. I need to learn about the subjects that I'm going to write about. I also do the physical research, which means for, like, Traders in Time, my very first book years ago, this deals with the fur trade. And since then, I've canoed over 4,000 miles of the Great Lakes in French voyageur costumes, living under the canoe in the evenings and baking the foods over brick ovens, or cooking meals in kettles over open fires, just to use the recipes of the past, to find out how those people felt, what muscles ached, what were their clothing. For me, as a woman portraying the French fur trade, I wear, of course, a French woman's outfit, which has 3 to 5 layers of skirts, and it begins with a feather in it, and a jacket, and that is long, and I'm generally in a canoe with other specialists that are doing research along these lines, and they are generally men who are wearing loincloths. So the women, just the comparison of clothing for different periods of time, it helps me understand what held women back, what moved women forward, what held men back, what moved men forward. So that type of physical research to go into the stories and learning about that helps develop the stories. Children always ask, teachers always ask, your books are descriptive, your stories are so descriptive. How did you get that feel? Well, it's not just writing the senses and including the senses in a story, which brings out detail in all of your stories, but it's also having that physical being there, whether it's cutting down trees or it's going on a 3-week-long wagon train trip, or whether it's dog sledding, and just learning all the different things that our historic ancestors had in the past to put into the storyline. So it makes research enjoyable, and I can share research with young people, and I can share the idea that learning and writing isn't just about gathering information that is old and dusty and boring. It's about connecting with people from the past that were like our ancestors. So those type of things go into the stories, and documentary historical fiction is kind of a specialist directive with writing, because most people don't spend that amount of time doing research. I always had publishers that say, you're going to get so tired of doing this research for the kids, why don't you just write the story? And how can you just write a story that doesn't move a child forward or a reader forward in their knowledge of that subject matter? I just don't want to do that. It's not worth it to me to spend my time to create something that isn't something someone can learn from.
Okay. Now, Janie, I must say, I was an English major undergrad, so you can tell I started out loving, I love reading. Never have heard of documentary historical fiction. Now I have a question, because this is kind of leads into the technology part, because you mentioned that sense, that physical being there, and how that informs your practice and your stories. So now when we're connecting with students and with all the technology we have now, how do we get students to have that physical being there experience, that type, if they're doing research, to put into their writing? Is that a valid question? I'm curious, because that's so captivating.
Yeah, it's very valid. Basically, first, you have to let students know that those doors for research are open around them continually. They can walk out their back door, and their backyard might have been a lumber camp at one time. Some of my books have reference to that, where, artifacts were found, and it starts them on their story. I'm a rock collector. You pick up rocks, depending on the locations that you're at, and you look at them closely. Native Americans always taught rocks were the oldest of grandfathers, the oldest of storytellers. You hold a rock in your hand and it will tell you a story. And sometimes you look at a rock and it's an arrowhead. It's been chipped into an arrowhead. Or you look at a rock and it's been carved out and it was a bowl that they would grind pigments or paint. And it's really to do around them. And it's research, information. It's right there around them. It's out their own backyard. Some research projects I've worked with students, it was oftentimes they do multiple connects with classrooms. I'll give them assignments and say, go out your backyard and make a checklist of what you see. Do you see trees? How big are those trees? Can you measure the trees? How many years do you think those trees have been there? Can you go to Google Earth and go back 5 years and see historically if that tree was there? You've got history growing in your backyard. Or on archaeological digs. I go on a lot of archaeological digs. Oftentimes, scout groups, Girl Scout, Boy Scout groups, church organizations that have youth programs. We often can do archaeological digs, maybe in the back property of the church or the back property. We find out where the old outhouses were. And kids, of course, first off, they grossed out by it, but then it's like, oh, put on the gloves, let's take our spades, let's see what we can bring out. Most times those outhouses were all filled in with waste from the house. And I don't mean nasty waste, I mean pots, pans, dishes, bowls, and you can bring out things from 100 years ago that's right in your backyard that are treasures that you never knew that were there. So you can do physical projects like that with students and just send them out on checklists and send them out connecting with what is around even in their own backyards or on their school grounds. And then, when you do further research with students, you can connect them to libraries or connect them to their local historical societies or have historians come in from their most of the time these connections are free. And you can just invite somebody from your local community that's an expert in your local history and connect those kids. When they realize, I always tell students, history isn't about a bunch of dead old guys. It's about you, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your family were the people that made history, not just Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and the well-educated, wealthy, and often white people. They were people of diverse cultures throughout our nation. And when those people from diversity, when you realize your own family connection, that they contributed to history, then all of a sudden it excites the individual student saying, wait a minute, I've got a part in this story too. And it opens the doors for children to understand and start to enjoy history. Most teachers, most kids will always say, I hate history. And you're going, oh, are you kidding? So telling them some facts, giving them some resources, and then allowing them to do some research on things they have interest in, all of a sudden opens a door to lifelong learning in a directive that they're leading because they're investigating themselves and their families.
Wow. Okay. I can see how kids can get really motivated talking to you. Your energy and your passion just comes through immediately. Now, my next question is, I love your comment that the students can see that they have a part in history. How powerful is that to be meaningful, to have meaning in your life? Now, I'm hearing you talk about research and writing, and you mentioned Traders in Time, you have books. What types of programs do you do for schools? And what could the teachers expect? I mean, are you just going to talk to the kids? Do the kids just sit and listen? Do they do something while they're connecting with you? Talk to me about what you do.
Well, there's many different types of programs. One, I always kind of baffle the teachers because I often say, if you have something specific that you have an outcome need for in your classroom, let's consult, give me some information, and then let me see if I can develop something just specifically for your classroom, if we're just doing a classroom connect. If it's a school connect, of course, it's a little bit different. The teachers have to work together to decide exactly what they're looking for. But the most of the type of programs that I've been doing, students read one of my books in the classroom, and basically they keep a journal. They keep a vocabulary list. They start drawing pictures and doing different types of connection with that project. And then they connect with me at the end of reading that story and then ask me all sorts of questions. What were you thinking? Where was your research from? Is this person a real person in history? How did you learn this information? Where does this all connect? And so we have that one-on-one. We do about an hour program that's like that. We often have teachers that are looking for the old way of bringing authors into the schools because of being cost prohibitive nowadays. You often have teachers and librarians that just want those children to have a connection with an author and to have them connect with the students connect with somebody that is a professional in the field, but also has a heart for the kids and understands that children might ask very goofy questions. I've had wonderfully goofy questions, which I'm pretty quick on my feet, so I kind of feed them back. But we have just an author visit, author interviews. I don't like to do programs where I'm the talking head, where it's just, if it's programmed for your kids, I need to know your kids, and I need to be able to have them ask me questions. When we're doing writing programs, of course, that's different because I send lots of handouts, lots of information. Teachers print them off for the students. And then I talk to them, whether it's about building character or working on settings or developing plot. And, I, of course, have to do the instruction part of it. But then I switch over to those handout sheets and we fill those out together. And if they have questions, one of the things I like to do with building character, I always say there's 8 components to building a character, and you have to have all 8 of those. And if I've got multiple schools that I'm connecting with, I have each school, give me a height, give me a hair color. And the kids are all of a sudden saying, no, I don't want it that color. I don't want the hair that color. I don't want the eyes like that. And then we talk about how we have to work together to build a character, because everybody will have the same character, but how when it comes to be their turn, that they can make a choice and contribute, and the other students will be working together. So it's problem solving, it's brainstorming, and it's filling out the handouts, and depending on what book the students or what era of history we're working on. I did a whole program on the Civil War, which was a writing program, and then I gave a story prompt, a Civil War story prompt, where students had to, of course, fill out, I do starters on it, and they would fill out the rest of the sentence. I basically created the setting and the characters, but the students filled in the things as we went. So, and we had a chance to discuss the Civil War and research and how it had an effect on the local communities that I was dealing with. And I had schools from Connecticut, Michigan, Washington, Texas. So I had schools all over the place that had a different story. And that, of course, opened dialogue in the classroom. So it's just these things. I like to plant seeds. I like to open ideas for dialogue. Guided dialogue for children, they can be brilliant with their answers, but they have to, if you can direct them in and show them lovingly, this is kind of where we want to go. What's your thoughts on this? And then let them contribute. They become part of the process.
Oh, that sounds really cool. The Civil War and writing. Oh my gosh. It sounds like the other thing I'm hearing from you is I think sometimes in schools, just by the nature of the schedule, we, departmentalize. And I know for me, it wasn't until I was in college that I realized, time goes in all places at the same time, because we'd study, here's U.S. history here, and then we'd go and we'd study, world history, and then when you added in the literature and what was going on in different areas. But it sounds like you really are merging and bringing the disciplines together.
I'm trying to be as much of a resource for teachers as I possibly can. I have the time to be out of my office. I go around the world. I've been to over 30 countries, and I just, I gather information, and then I get back and do the research that applies it to our American history, the changes, Ellis Island, different groups of people, the different things they brought with them. I go to the different countries that I'm doing research to try to gather that information and get those stories. I have the time. Teachers are so restricted, and they are so limited on at this point, what they want to do. I always say teachers become the best writers. So maybe someday when they're retired and rewired, they might want to become authors themselves. And, to be able to bring these things in and realize what teachers' needs are, I think that's most important. I could write books that are fashionable, or books that are popular, or zombie stories, or this and that. If I do anything like that, it has to have a historical background. I'm looking at writing books about werewolves, but it was where the French story of werewolves started in the 1500s, and it all appears to look, because there's a lot of records in France on werewolves, it all appeared to have started by groups of people that had rabies, and they were attacking one another, and they were passing it on. And so how cool would that be to have, the popular story, but then to see that it has fact and base, and that's how our stories and our histories are created.
Oh, I love that. And when you say that about the story, and there's the popular, but the stories, and I do a lot of reading, in business development, and one of the things I was quite surprised to find is that some of our large corporations are actually training their sales staff in story and storytelling, how to craft. And there was one company that they would not let their team members, they didn't do PowerPoints with bulleted points. Instead, they were challenging them to craft a story. And they actually were having to teach the storytelling. So that's interesting as we see it develop in different areas now. You told me in our conversations we got started, you have been video conferencing for 16 years. So I want you to tell me just some of the changes you've noticed. What do you call them? Do you call these virtual field trips, programs, lessons? So tell us what you've kind of learned along the way in those 16 years, and then also feedback from teachers and students.
Basically, when I started all those years ago, I was invited into a studio setting. My books, the first sets of my books were being read in the classroom, and it was author interviews. They would read, they would have questions to ask, and it started out, would I be interested or comfortable in a studio setting? And I'm a bit of a ham, so that wasn't an issue. And because I have a lot of theater background and because I have storytelling background, it was like, oh, well, okay, we can do this very easily. And my whole thought was, let's make the students comfortable. And I need to be comfortable, but I don't, and the people that I was working with in the studio needed to be comfortable. They never knew where I was coming from, and I was working with a lot of men at that time because it was basically male-oriented, and they were coming from real, what do I want to say, technical backgrounds from television programs and running cameras and things like that. And I could see over a couple of years that what was happening was these guys all of a sudden thought, well, I guess she isn't that goofy. I guess kids really like it, and she's really giving solid information. And I end up doing weeks on end now of programs right here in my own home office because what happened, Polycom Company picked me up as one of their first authors and basically doing programs for them. And they said, you don't have to go to Detroit, Michigan to do these programs. We need you to have your own studio. And they set me up with equipment. And now, as often as I can do programs to help facilitate the teachers and help them with this is what I do. What I've seen the changes, I watched as teachers originally were very uncomfortable doing their grades by computer. They did not want to use the computer. They were not comfortable with it. They weren't comfortable with email. They weren't comfortable with any of that type of invasive connection. And now, I love all of the young teachers that are coming aboard too because they're coming with technical experience. I do a lot of universities with their pre-service teachers, and they connect with me just because they want me to connect. They want to do a program with me. They want to be comfortable. They want to help teach their teachers how to be more comfortable with this. And 15 years ago, of course, that did not exist. Today, it exists, and it's funny how junior, sophomore, and senior students are often like junior, sophomore, and senior students in high school. You know, when you have the sophomore college students, they're kind of like, it was just like, okay, you're an eighth grader. I get that. All right. And I always tease them a little bit. Once they get connected, once I tease them, once there's an outreach, once there's a connection there, and invite them into part of the story of what it is we're going to be doing, that, you know, it's just like sitting beside a friend and talking. That's how comfortable it has gotten today, where before even the people that were running the cameras were very uptight and the lighting and this had to be perfect and that had to be perfect and oh my goodness, what you going to do today? And now it's like, go for it. Enjoy it, love it, and share it. And I don't think there's hardly any limits as long as it's serving a purpose for education. I don't see limits being put on to any of the programs that we're doing. It's really, really something that is incredible. And it is the future. It is definitely the future.
So what do the teachers and students tell you after they connect with you?
I've gotten lots of notes and letters. I've been honorable mentions and won Content Service Providers Awards by doing work with teachers and voting me in. And I get a lot of letters saying, oh my gosh, her program was so gross. I cannot believe it. She talked about long john underwear and outhouses, and she talked about fleas and bed bugs and lice, and my kids loved it. So, and it's just like, okay, there's, of course, buzzwords that teachers all know, and I know that, you know, will bring kids into the story that because they don't often hear those words in a public setting, especially education. And so a lot of it's taking historic fact is what I like to do. Taking writing fact, taking experiences and storytelling, and presenting it in a way that invites the person into it, where they're interacting and they feel as much involved as I do. And so the teacher like that. I like that. I would just hate to be sitting and just being the talking head. It would just, especially when you got these great kids with such giggly, wonderful personalities and such wonderful, fresh brains. It'd be terrible just to sit there.
Okay, I'm going to keep that one, fresh brains, because sometimes we do get tired. So we're going to take the fresh brains and energize them. Now, Janie, talk to me about cost of your programming, appropriate for what grade levels, and your topics. I've heard you mention Civil War. I've heard you mention the fur trade, and I know we can find that specifically on your website. But cost, grades, topics.
Basically, the programs run for 3rd through 8th grade, but I have done kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Of course, those are a lot shorter because the attention span for the students. But I like to focus on 3rd through 8th grade as the basic level because that's the readership of the books also. Mm-hmm. So there's a better connection that way. Cost, basically, I try to keep it right about $100 per hour program. If you're booking, I do a residence, author in residence program where I can visit with a school 4 times in a row and over a month period or over a 2-month period of time and help the kids create a writing project. And, depending on what the needs are, the prices are very adjustable to be able, if you've got multiple visits, we can make some adjustments. If it's a one-time visit, basically $100 is what the visit is. And if the books are being used in the classroom, I also do Skype visits, which are free, which just help the teachers have that extra connection with the author. So all of those things can happen. We've got, of course, the author interviews. We've got the book where they read the books and make those connections and do their journaling projects. We've got research projects. I also have a lot of things on my website, which is just jlpanagopolous.com, and there's trailers there for the different books. There's a lot of different virtual field trips because I live in Virginia. I moved here. I was so enthused by all of the amount of history that is around me. We have Jamestown here. We have Williamsburg. I've got 88 national battlefields within a 20-mile radius of my home. I like to go to those places. I like to film them and then create small 5-minute clips and do a lesson plan that goes along with them that the teachers can use free. They go to my website. They can just connect with them and download them. And, the end of the Civil War or what it was like with John Brown, and those experiences. They can connect with those and just download them free. Those are things just on my website. And I always tell teachers, if you would like me to go someplace that's in my area, what a wonderful excuse to do research. So, I've had teachers say, well, can you go here? Can you go there? I'm going, why not? Why not? I can go to Thomas Jefferson's home. I live 40 minutes from it. So, and I've been there 8 times during the summer. So, just filming and creating a clip where Thomas Jefferson's wife was born at another plantation that's close by and the stories that go with it. Those things are all doable if you've got questions in your classroom that I can facilitate those. And generally just those type of clips go on my website and they're free for downloads.
Nice. Oh my goodness. So now I heard you mention if they're reading the books, they can do a little Skype visit for free. And I know you have you can do 323 video conferencing, Skype. So how can we connect with you?
Basically, it can be a direct connect. The Skype visit, of course, and doing a lot of blogging with teachers also. They do a Skype visit and they read a book. They do a Skype visit, whether it's a free or paid program through IP address. And then while they're reading the book, they just contact me through my email address, of course, which is author@prodigy.net, very simple. And when they connect with me, they've got a blog set up. They say, would you come to my blog site, my classroom? We're reading chapter 1 and we'll have questions and can you answer some of those questions? And I do those type of things too. As long as I'm in my office, sometimes on the road for conferences and things, but as long as I'm in my office and if I can help a teacher with a better understanding of history or writing or research, that's who I am. As a writer, I'm really nothing without a reader. And as a writer, I'm really, because I write for teachers as a resource, I write for students. Without the students, without the teachers, I might as well not be doing anything at all. So, it is my responsibility and my job. And I do recommend that all teachers, if you have a favorite author, that maybe you connect with that favorite author and ask them if they will do some of these things for you. Because it's true for them, too, that without a reader, writers would be nothing. So, you should be a little demanding as an educator to want to have people that are in positions like what I have to help you. And, of course, I'm too busy. Well, so am I, but it's important. It's important that if you are our readers, that we help facilitate your needs.
Oh, that is, I tell you what, I doodle, so expect some of the things you've said to show up on my Facebook as a doodle, because
That's
really enjoy that. Wow. So that is, and I never thought of that, because, teachers do have a favorite author, and so, to reach out to them, especially, our contemporary authors, to have that connection, I was thinking, wow, what a memorable, amazing experience for our students. That's awesome. Now, Janie,
I have gotten in trouble from writers before saying, will you please stop telling people to do this because they're bothering me and I just not going to do it. And it's just like, okay, all right, shame on you. So I'm out there pushing on the writers' side of it too at conferences saying you should be doing this for the teachers.
That is, thank you on behalf of teachers everywhere, Janie. So now you mentioned J.L. Panagopolous, and I'll do show notes. So I'll put a link to your blog. I'll link out to your YouTube channel. I know I've friended you on Facebook, so I follow some of the things that you're doing. Social media, how can teachers connect with you? Where else can we find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, of course, and of course Facebook, and I'm on Twitter. I've done them all or do them all. Of course, not all of them are kept up to date because I'm busy with teachers. But if you're interested in connecting with me on Facebook, you can connect with me through there. The books are sold through the website at riverroadpublications.com, and I'm connected directly with that too. So,
all right. So that's what I'll do is I will get all of those links there for buying your books, for connecting with you. Now, you did mention Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Is there a platform of choice? Because, that's the one thing. I don't like to connect to people on a platform that they just kind of really not. So is there one that you prefer?
Professionally, LinkedIn.
Okay.
But personally, I am terrific with Facebook because I do check Facebook. All of my friends are on Facebook. How about that? all of my personal connections are on Facebook because working in an office, everyone knows. If you're in a classroom or an office, 24/7 practically, your outside connections, unless it's with your immediate family, is generally through social media. Yes. And so that's my connection. Facebook works too.
Okay, so we'll do that. And let me check. Any newsletter, any blog, anything like that going on?
Well, I've got a blog. It's more for adult writers, and that's on WordPress, and that's just under Janie Panagopolous, and that can be found there too.
Okay, well, I will do that. Well, I tell you what, Janie, this has been my pleasure. Now what I'm thinking of, I'm like, wow, I just want to take a trip. You make me want to research to have that question and find out. And I love so many of the quotes that you see. I love your attitude of not seeing limits. You see possibilities, and that has just shown through during our conversation here. A couple things I'm going to take with me here. I love you encouraging students to have a part in history. They have a part in the story. The other one, I love that the rocks are the oldest storytellers. That is it's just beautifully elegant. I love that. And I really am just amazed at your enthusiasm and passion for being a resource for teachers. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Any last words of closing for us?
My favorite saying is readers make leaders. And I know all of you teachers are the ones that are helping these students take those next steps in life. If I could just be a part of that and be helpful. Children keep me writing. When I do my connections with the kids, it's like, this is why I'm doing it. this is why I want to be part of what all of you do. I'm just a writer. You are all changing the world with having the children in your classrooms.
Well, thank you so much. So I'm Roxanne Glauser here with our whirlidurb Content Connections, and today we had author Janie Panagopolous with us. Thank you so much, Janie.
My pleasure. Thank you.